Have you ever looked at your monthly Social Security deposit and wondered, is this really the amount I've earned after working for decades? Most retirees never ask that question. They assume the government calculated everything correctly, the number is final, and there's nothing more to think about. But what if that assumption is costing someone money every single month? Today, we're talking about an issue that every American born before 1955 should understand. This is not about a new Social Security payment, a bonus check, or a surprise government program. Instead, it's about something much more important. The possibility that your Social Security benefit may not accurately reflect your lifetime earnings or the way your claim was processed. Now, that doesn't mean everyone is being underpaid. In fact, many people receive exactly what they're entitled to. However, the Social Security Administration itself acknowledges that mistakes can happen. Earnings records can contain errors. Missing wages can affect benefit calculations, and in some situations, benefits have been corrected after retirees provided additional documentation. The important thing is knowing whether your record is accurate. Because here's something many people don't realize. The Social Security Administration doesn't routinely contact every retiree to say, "We found an error in your earnings history." Instead, benefits are generally calculated using the earnings information already on file. If something is missing, or if information wasn't reported correctly years ago, it may remain unnoticed unless someone reviews the record. That's why staying informed matters. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how Social Security calculates retirement benefits, what kinds of errors are actually possible, and how to check your own record so you can have greater confidence that you're receiving the amount you've earned. So stay with me. Near the end of this video, I'll explain one of the most overlooked parts of the entire Social Security system. A simple review that many retirees have never done, even though it only takes a few minutes online. It could provide valuable peace of mind, and in some cases, it may uncover information worth discussing with the Social Security Administration. Before we begin, if you enjoy straightforward updates about Social Security, retirement, Medicare, IRS news, and other important financial topics affecting Americans, make sure you're subscribed. Our goal is simple. Explain complicated government programs in plain English so you know what matters and what doesn't. Now let's start with the foundation of everything. Because before anyone can determine whether their monthly benefit is correct, they first need to understand how Social Security calculates retirement benefits in the first place. Most people think their retirement benefit is based on the last job they had before retiring. That isn't true. Others believe it's calculated using however much they earned during the last 10 years of work. That's also incorrect. The actual calculation is much more detailed. Social Security looks at your entire working career. Every year that you worked in jobs covered by Social Security taxes, your wages were reported to the government under your Social Security number. Those earnings become part of your lifetime earnings record. When it's time to calculate retirement benefits, the SSA doesn't simply total everything you've ever earned. Instead, it identifies your 35 highest earning years. Those years are adjusted to account for changes in average wages over time, allowing earnings from decades ago to be compared more fairly with today's dollars. Once those earnings are indexed, they're averaged to produce what's known as your average indexed monthly earnings, often called your AIME. That number is then put through a formula established by law to determine your primary insurance amount, or PIA. Your primary insurance amount represents the monthly retirement benefit you're generally entitled to if you begin receiving benefits at your full retirement age. It sounds complicated, and honestly it is, but there's one part of the calculation that's surprisingly easy to understand. Everything depends on the accuracy of your earnings record. Imagine your lifetime earnings history like building a house. Every year you worked is another brick. If every brick is there, the house is solid. But if one or two bricks are missing, the structure changes. The same thing happens with Social Security. If 1 year of earnings wasn't properly recorded, or if wages from a particular employer never made it into your record, that missing information could affect the benefit calculation. Now, that doesn't automatically mean your monthly payment will change dramatically. Sometimes the impact is very small. Sometimes there may be no impact at all because those missing earnings weren't among your highest 35 years. But in other situations, especially if higher earning years are involved. Correcting an earnings record could potentially change the benefit calculation. That's why reviewing your earnings history is considered such an important part of retirement planning. Here's another point many people overlook. Social Security isn't only relying on information from the last decade. For Americans born before 1955, the earnings record may stretch back into the 1970s, the 1960s, or even earlier. Think about that for a moment. How many employers have you had throughout your lifetime? How many payroll departments no longer exist? How many businesses have closed, merged, or changed ownership? How many paper records from 40 or 50 years ago were eventually archived or destroyed? The overwhelming majority of earnings records are accurate. But given the enormous size of the Social Security system and the fact that it covers hundreds of millions of workers over many decades, occasional errors can and do occur. That's one reason the SSA allows individuals to review their own earnings history. Now let's talk about something that often surprises retirees. Many people believe their Social Security payment is automatically recalculated every year based on inflation alone. That's only partly true. Annual cost of living adjustments, commonly called COLAs, can increase monthly benefits. However, a COLA doesn't correct an underlying earnings record. Think of it this way. If your starting benefit was accurate, your annual COLA builds on that correct amount. But if the original calculation relied on incomplete earnings information, future COLAs are still being applied to that original benefit. That's why it's important for the starting calculation itself to be accurate. Now, if you were born before 1955, there's another date that matters just as much. Your full retirement age, often called FRA. For people born between 1943 and 1954, full retirement age is generally 66 years old. That's the age at which you're eligible to receive your full retirement benefit based on your earnings history. Claiming earlier than your full retirement age generally results in permanently reduced monthly benefits. Waiting beyond full retirement age, up to age 70, can increase monthly benefits through delayed retirement credits. Many retirees know those basic rules. But what they don't always realize is that the calculation behind those numbers still depends on having an accurate earnings record. In other words, even if you claim benefits at exactly the right age, it's still worthwhile to make sure the earnings information used in the calculation was complete, because timing and earnings records are two separate parts of the system, and understanding that difference is incredibly important. In the next part of this video, we'll look at the most common reasons retirees discover their benefit is lower than expected, including missing earnings records, delayed retirement credits, survivor benefit calculations, and real examples of how these issues have been corrected after review. Some of those situations are more common than most people realize, and knowing about them could help you better understand your own Social Security record. Now that you understand how Social Security calculates retirement benefits, let's answer the question that probably brought you here in the first place. How does someone end up receiving less than they expected? There isn't just one answer. In fact, there are several different situations that can lead a retiree to believe their benefit is too low. Some are perfectly normal and based on the law. Others may involve missing information that should be reviewed. The key is knowing the difference. Let's start with the most common situation: missing or incorrect earnings records. Imagine you worked for a manufacturing company in the early 1980s. Every paycheck had Social Security taxes withheld. You did your job. Your employer reported your wages. Years passed. The company eventually closed. For decades later, you're retired. When your Social Security benefit is calculated, 1 year's wages are missing from your earnings history. Maybe the wages were reported incorrectly. Maybe there was an administrative issue years ago. Maybe your earnings were recorded under an incorrect Social Security number before being corrected. These situations are uncommon, but they do happen. And if those missing wages were part of your highest 35 earning years, your monthly benefit could be affected. Now here's something important. Not every missing year changes your benefit. Suppose you worked for 42 years. Social Security only uses your highest 35 years. If one missing year happened to be among your lowest paying years, replacing it may not change your benefit at all. But if it was one of your better earning years, correcting the record could make a difference. That's why simply assuming everything must be correct isn't always the best approach. Verification is better than assumption. Early retirement isn't an error. Here's another situation that causes confusion every single year. Someone tells their friend, "My neighbor gets $2,400 a month, but I only receive $1,850. Something must be wrong." Not necessarily. The age you claimed Social Security has a major impact on your monthly payment. For Americans born between 1943 and 1954, full retirement age is generally 66. If benefits were claimed at age 62, the monthly payment is permanently reduced under Social Security rules. That reduction isn't a mistake. It's part of the program. On the other hand, someone who waited beyond full retirement age, up to age 70, may receive delayed retirement credits that permanently increase their monthly benefit. So too, neighbors with nearly identical careers can receive very different monthly checks simply because they claimed at different ages. That's why comparing your payment to someone else's usually doesn't tell you very much. Every retirement story is different. Different work histories matter. Here's another misunderstanding that's surprisingly common. Many retirees think, "I worked for 30 years, so why is my benefit lower than someone else's who worked for the same amount of time?" The answer often comes down to lifetime earnings. Remember, Social Security isn't based on how many years you worked alone. It's based on how much you earned during your highest 35 years after those earnings are adjusted according to the program's formula. Someone who consistently earned higher wages throughout their career generally receives a larger benefit than someone whose earnings were lower. That's exactly how the program was designed. Again, that isn't an error. It's simply how the calculation works. When life changes your earnings record, life rarely follows a perfect schedule. Some people left the workforce for several years to raise children. Others served as caregivers for aging parents. Some experienced layoffs during difficult economic periods. Others dealt with illness or disability before retirement. Every one of those situations can affect lifetime earnings. And because Social Security looks at your highest 35 earning years, years with little or no earnings may reduce the average used in the calculation. Many retirees are surprised to learn this. They assume only their good years matter. But if someone worked fewer than 35 years in Social Security-covered employment, the calculation includes 0 earning years to reach the full 35-year average. That's one reason people with shorter work histories sometimes receive smaller benefits than expected. Another area worth checking. There's another part of the process many retirees overlook completely. Their personal earnings history. Most people never look at it. Think about that. You may carefully review your bank statement every month. You probably glance over your credit card bill. You might even double-check your utility bill. But many Americans never review the earnings record that determines one of the largest retirement income sources they'll ever receive. It's understandable. People assume the information must already be correct. And most of the time it is. But most of the time isn't the same as every single time. That's why the Social Security Administration provides access to your earnings history through your online My Social Security account. It allows you to review every year of earnings reported under your Social Security number. If everything looks accurate, that's great. You'll have additional confidence that your benefit was based on the correct information. If something appears incorrect, you'll know it's worth asking questions. A realistic example. Let's consider a hypothetical example. Meet Robert. Robert worked as an electrician for nearly 4 decades. He retired believing everything had been handled correctly. Several years into retirement, one of his sons helped him create a My Social Security account online. As they reviewed the earnings history, they noticed that one year showed unusually low wages compared to the years before and after it. Robert remembered working full-time that year. He found old tax records in a filing cabinet. Instead of assuming the record was wrong, he contacted the Social Security Administration to ask why the numbers didn't match. After reviewing the documentation, the agency determined additional earnings should be credited to his record. That review resulted in an adjustment to his benefit. Now, this won't happen in every case. Sometimes the records are already correct. Sometimes available documentation isn't enough to support a change. But Robert's story illustrates something important. You don't know unless you check. And here's something else worth remembering. Social Security serves tens of millions of retirees across the United States. It's one of the largest government benefit programs in the world. With a system that large, occasional administrative mistakes are possible. That's why beneficiaries have the right to review their own records and request corrections if they believe something is inaccurate. Notice the wording. Request a review. Not demand more money. Not assume the government made a mistake. Simply request that the information be verified. That's an important distinction. In the next part, we'll go step by step through exactly how to review your Social Security earnings history, what documents may be helpful if something looks incorrect, how delayed retirement credits work, and what to do if you believe your benefit should be reviewed. Now comes the most practical part of this video. If you've been wondering whether your Social Security benefit was calculated correctly, this is where you'll learn exactly what to do. The good news is that checking your information doesn't require hiring a lawyer or paying someone hundreds of dollars. In most cases, you can begin the process yourself. And it starts with one simple step. Step 1. Access your My Social Security account. Visit the official Social Security Administration website and sign in to your My Social Security account. If you've never created one before, don't worry. The registration process is straightforward, although you'll need to verify your identity before gaining access. Once you're logged in, you'll see several pieces of information related to your Social Security record. One of the most important sections is your earnings history. This page shows your reported earnings for every year you've worked in jobs covered by Social Security. Don't rush through it. Take your time. Go year by year. Start with your earliest working years and continue all the way through retirement. You're looking for anything that doesn't seem right. For example, did you work full-time during a year that shows little or no earnings? Do you see a year where your reported income appears much lower than you remember? Are there any obvious gaps during periods when you know you were employed? If everything looks correct, that's excellent news. It means the earnings record used to calculate your retirement benefit appears complete. But if something stands out, don't panic. Instead, make a note of the specific year or years involved. Those are the records you'll want to review more closely. Step 2. Gather supporting documents. The next step is collecting any records that help verify what you actually earned. Many retirees still have old tax returns stored in filing cabinets or boxes. Others kept W-2 forms, payroll records, or other employment documents. Even if you don't have every document from decades ago, don't assume you have no options. Start with whatever records you can find. Sometimes even partial documentation helps explain why an earnings record appears different than expected. If you no longer have your own records, you may also consider whether former employers, payroll providers, or tax professionals still have archived information. Again, every situation is different. The goal isn't to prove an error immediately. The goal is simply to gather information before contacting the Social Security Administration. Step 3. Contact the Social Security Administration. Once you've identified a possible issue, the next step is reaching out to the Social Security Administration. Explain what you found. Be specific. Instead of saying, "I think my benefit is wrong," try saying, "I reviewed my earnings history and noticed my wages for a particular year appeared different from what I expected. I'd like to understand whether my record is accurate." That approach makes it easier for the representative to understand exactly what you're asking. Depending on the situation, they may explain why the record is correct, or they may ask for additional documentation if further review is appropriate. Remember, not every question results in a correction, but asking questions is part of protecting your own retirement benefits. Another often overlooked factor, delayed retirement credits. Now let's talk about something many retirees have heard about but don't fully understand. Delayed retirement credits. For people born between 1943 and 1954, full retirement age is generally 66. If someone chooses to wait beyond that age before claiming retirement benefits, their monthly payment can increase. Why? Because Social Security rewards delayed claiming. For each year benefits are delayed, up to age 70, the monthly benefit grows through delayed retirement credits. That means someone who waited until age 70 may receive a significantly larger monthly benefit than someone with the same earnings history who claimed at age 66. If you delayed claiming benefits, it's worth reviewing your benefit information to make sure your retirement age and benefit amount are consistent with your filing history. Again, this doesn't mean an error occurred. It simply means understanding how your benefit was calculated. Knowledge is valuable. What about survivor benefits? There's another group of Americans who should pay particularly close attention to their Social Security records: widows and widowers. Survivor benefits have their own eligibility rules and calculation methods. They can be more complex than standard retirement benefits because they depend on several factors, including the deceased spouse's earnings record, the survivor's age when benefits begin, and other eligibility requirements. Over the years, the Social Security Administration has identified and corrected certain benefit calculation issues affecting some survivors. That doesn't mean every survivor benefit contains an error. Far from it. But it does show why reviewing your individual benefit information can be worthwhile. If you're receiving survivor benefits and something doesn't seem consistent with the information you've been given, contacting the SSA for clarification is a reasonable step. Don't assume, verify. There's an old saying, trust but verify. It applies perfectly here. Most people assume government records must always be accurate, and most of the time they are. But your retirement income is too important to leave entirely to assumptions. Think about how many financial decisions you've made throughout your life. You compared mortgage rates before buying a home. You reviewed insurance policies before signing them. You check your bank statements for unusual transactions. Reviewing your Social Security earnings record deserves the same level of attention. After all, these benefits may provide income for 20 or 30 years of retirement. Spending a few minutes reviewing your record is a small investment of time compared to the importance of the benefit itself. Here's what you should remember. If your earnings history looks accurate, that's great. You've gained confidence that your retirement benefit is based on the information currently on file. If something looks questionable, don't immediately assume the benefit is wrong. Instead, gather your information, ask questions, and let the Social Security Administration review the record. Sometimes there's a simple explanation. Sometimes additional documentation is needed. And occasionally, a correction may be appropriate. The important thing is taking the first step instead of wondering about it for years. In the final part of this video, we'll recap everything we've covered, discuss why reviewing your Social Security record should become part of every retiree's financial checklist, and leave you with a simple action plan you can complete in less than 30 minutes. We've covered a lot of information in this video, so let's bring everything together. If there's one message I hope you remember, it's this. Never assume your Social Security benefit is wrong, but never assume it's automatically right either. The best approach is to verify your own record. After working for decades, paying Social Security taxes year after year, you've earned the right to understand exactly how your retirement benefit was calculated. And fortunately, checking your record is easier today than it was just a few years ago. Instead of requesting paper files or making multiple office visits, much of the information you need is available through your online My Social Security account. That makes reviewing your earnings history one of the simplest financial checkups you can do during retirement. Think of it like an annual health exam. You don't schedule a doctor's appointment because you expect something to be wrong. You do it because prevention is always better than discovering a problem years later. The same idea applies here. Reviewing your earnings history doesn't mean you're expecting a mistake. It simply means you're making sure one of your most important retirement income sources is based on accurate information. Your simple Social Security checklist. Before we finish, here's a quick checklist you can follow. First, log into your My Social Security account if you haven't done so recently. Take a few minutes to review your earnings history from the beginning of your career through retirement. Look for any years that seem unusual or incomplete. Second, compare what you see with your own memories and records. Do you remember working during a year that shows little or no reported income? Does a particular year seem significantly lower than expected? If everything matches, that's excellent. You can move forward with greater confidence, knowing your record appears accurate. Third, if you notice something that doesn't make sense, gather whatever documentation you have available. Old tax returns, W-2 forms, payroll records, employment documents, anything that helps explain the earnings for the year in question. Fourth, contact the Social Security Administration if you believe a review is appropriate. Ask questions. Request clarification. Explain what you found. Remember, you're not asking for special treatment. You're simply making sure the information used to calculate your retirement benefit is complete and accurate. Why this matters? For many retirees, Social Security isn't just another monthly payment. It's the foundation of their retirement income. It helps pay for housing, groceries, prescription medications, utilities, transportation, and countless everyday expenses. That's exactly why understanding your benefit matters. Even if your payment turns out to be completely correct, you'll have something just as valuable. Confidence. Confidence that your earnings history is accurate. Confidence that your benefit reflects the information on file. Confidence that you've taken an active role in protecting your retirement finances. And if a legitimate issue is discovered, then you'll already be moving through the proper process to have it reviewed. Either outcome is worthwhile. Don't wait until someone else mentions it. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming they'll eventually hear about a problem if one exists. Maybe a friend will mention it. Maybe a family member will notice. Maybe someone from the government will call. But financial planning rarely works that way. The people who stay informed are usually the people who take the initiative. They ask questions. They review their records. They keep important documents. And they stay updated whenever Social Security announces changes that may affect retirees. That proactive approach can make a real difference over the course of retirement. Share this information. If you have a parent, spouse, sibling, neighbor, or close friend who was born before 1955 and is already collecting Social Security, consider sharing this video with them. Not because you're telling them something is wrong, but because you're encouraging them to verify something that's important. Sometimes a 5-minute review provides peace of mind. Sometimes it answers questions they've had for years. And occasionally, it may identify an issue worth discussing with the Social Security Administration. Either way, becoming informed is never a bad investment. Final thoughts. Social Security has helped generations of Americans retire with greater financial security. It's a complex program built on decades of earnings records, detailed formulas, and millions of individual accounts. Like any large system, questions can arise. That's why understanding how your benefit works is one of the smartest financial habits you could develop. Remember these 3 simple points. Know how your benefit is calculated. Review your earnings history periodically. And if something appears inconsistent, ask questions through the proper channels. Those 3 steps can help you better understand one of the most important retirement benefits you've earned throughout your working life. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more easy-to-understand updates on Social Security, Medicare, retirement planning, IRS news, and other important financial topics affecting Americans. We post new videos regularly to help you separate facts from rumors and stay informed about the programs that matter most. And before you leave, let me ask you one question. Have you ever reviewed your Social Security earnings history online? Let us know your experience in the comments below. Your story could encourage another retiree to take a closer look at their own record. Thanks for watching, stay informed, stay prepared, and I'll see you in the next video.